Markets are up massively today on the news of a 2-week ceasefire in the Middle East. But what's more interesting is what the Financial Times reported this morning. Iran is apparently demanding payments in Bitcoin for all the vessels that pass through the Strait of Hormuz. That's $2 million of Bitcoin for every vessel. Considering roughly about 100 vessels pass through the Strait of Hormuz every day, that would imply about $200 million of Bitcoin either needing to be bought every day or at least being transacted in. And that's about $60 billion a year. And on Monday, Bloomberg is reporting that the Iran war killed the petrodollar. So did the Financial Times just tell us that Bitcoin is now the replacement for the dollar? Are we watching the world transition to adopting Bitcoin as the new neutral reserve currency? It's honestly happening a lot faster than I thought. This was one of those very surprising things that come out of this war. But I will start with the ceasefire. As I was telling you guys yesterday, last night was the Super Bowl for monitoring the situation. Everyone was watching what was going to happen by 8 p.m. Eastern time. And then we got this at about 7 p.m. Eastern time. About 7. It was 6:47 when the White House posted. So this is the official announcement from President Donald J. Trump on the official White House Twitter. I don't know if I should need to read the whole thing, but we got here. Based on conversations with the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir of Pakistan, and wherein they request that I hold off the destructive force being sent tonight to Iran, and subject to the Islam Republic of Iran agreeing to the complete, immediate, and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz, I agreed to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. Now, not to read the whole thing, but the other part that really is, I think, the linchpin to this whole conversation, especially regarding Bitcoin, is this part. We received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. Now, this is where there's still a lot of confusion here, because a lot of people are wondering, like, is the war over? Is this just a ceasefire? Is there actually negotiations happening? Or is this another delay tactic, and in 2 weeks, everything's going to resume as it has been doing the last couple of days, or rather the last couple of attempts here. Here is the official statement from Iran posted by the White House Twitter account. And we have, on behalf of the Islamic Republic of Iran, I express gratitude and appreciation for my dear brothers, HE Prime Minister of Pakistan Sharif and HE Field Marshal Munir for their tireless efforts to end the war in the region. In response to the brotherly request of Prime Minister Sharif in his tweet, and considering the request by the U.S. for negotiations based on its 15-point proposal, as well as announcement by POTUS about acceptance of the general framework of Iran's 10-point proposal as a basis for negotiation. If attacks against Iran are halted, our powerful armed forces will cease their defensive operations. At least for a period of 2 weeks, safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz will be possible via coordination with Iran's armed forces and with due consideration of technical limitations. Now, if you were watching the markets like I was telling you guys last night, we saw some interesting things happen. I think the biggest one for the global macro picture is that WTI crude oil basically dropped 20%. So I think that's the biggest drop we've seen since 2020, since the pandemic. And I think this is where all of these conversations have been happening. As much as maybe Trump really wants to do what he's saying in Iran, what has really been holding him back is the fact that we're seeing oil go absolutely crazy. Doesn't seem like rate cuts are on the table for bonds. So if this prolonged longer, and there's still an if, that's still kind of, up in the air at the moment, but the main concern was going to be oil prices. That is probably the biggest concern for everyone watching what was going on in the Middle East. And now it seems, hey, on this ceasefire, the markets have cooled. The markets are, and especially in oil, 20% discount literally overnight. Now, in terms of Bitcoin, we saw Bitcoin basically pump up to around 72.8. And here is kind of a headline covering it from the block. And there you go. Bitcoin jumps on U.S.-Iran ceasefire talks. Long-term rally remains uncertain. Obviously, once we heard about this ceasefire last night, Bitcoin rebounded very strong, which was one of the things I was telling you guys I was watching last night is, hey, first of all, what's going to happen? Is there going to be a massive bombing campaign last night? If so, how is that going to affect global markets? Well, we got a ceasefire. Seems like markets are cooling off. And at the same time, Bitcoin started pumping. It feels good. It feels like we're almost back, right? Well, there's still some uncertainty up in the air. I think the next 2 weeks are going to be very interesting in regards to what happens, but further what happens in the global markets and how Bitcoin reacts. Now, that's just to kind of cover the basics. If you weren't on Twitter last night, if you weren't following social media, that's where we currently stand, though there are some developments this morning that I will cover a little bit. But the big news for us as Bitcoiners, I think the big kind of defining story here is what the Financial Times reported. Now, I don't have a Financial Times account, but I did fact check that this was true. Here's Bitcoin Magazine's coverage of it. Iran to accept Bitcoin for Strait of Hormuz transit as ceasefires takes hold. Iran plans to charge ships Bitcoin's tolls to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, tying the cryptocurrency to a key global energy checkpoint. Now, I've talked about this idea on the show for a long time. Currently, if you understand how the world works, it's really run by the petrodollar. It's the fact that energy, or rather oil, is tied to dollars. That the only way you can really interact and buy oil is through interacting and using dollars. This is the petrodollar system. This is where everything kind of is connected to the dollar because the dollar is connected to oil, or rather energy. And one of the things that Bitcoiners have been saying for a long time is the idea of the petrosat, or the petro Bitcoin system, that Bitcoin being a money, a currency, a commodity, however you want to frame it, but being directly tied to energy is one of the things that gives Bitcoin the value that it does. But what would be a very revolutionary and huge step would be if energy is priced in Bitcoin. Not only is it an energy money, but if energy was priced in Bitcoin, and therefore people would be using Bitcoin to purchase their energy needs. Now, this is where the story does get very interesting, because at least allegedly, from what the Financial Times has reported, and the only reason we're really talking about the Financial Times today in a positive light is because they are a, quote, trusted institution here. Like this is not just Bitcoin Twitter anon accounts posting this and saying this is happening. This is not an April Fool's joke. This is what they're officially posting on Financial Times. So it is a reputable source, at least for the most part. Now, we could obviously talk about whether these are rumors, whether this is actually the current state of affairs. Nico wants to pop in.
All right. So this is super real, and the geopolitical implications of this are absolutely massive.
100%.
I can't emphasize enough what Opti said about this not being just noise. This is Saifedean Ammous, author of the Bitcoin Standard. This is his post, and it is a screenshot of the Financial Times.
Yeah. Well, I was going to get to that, but
article. Okay. Iran is collecting its Hormuz toll in Bitcoin. This completely falls into the theory as to why we believe Bitcoin is going to be the world reserve currency. Reason number one, right? You can't debase it. The U.S. government gets a tremendous amount of power from being able to debase its own currency. Do you think other countries that hold the United States dollar appreciate that? Do you think they like that? They don't like that. They deal with it because the dollars is a great way to, transact overseas. However, the dollar has been weaponized, right? As soon as the sanctions started happening against Russia, when the Ukraine conflict started happening, what did a lot of Western countries do? they froze the accounts of any entities that were related to Russia. I received a wire from Brazil. Check this out. I received a wire from Brazil because I made an investment in Brazil. And the LLC that I was receiving the wire to in the United States, it had some type of like, apparently there's some type of entity in Russia that has a very similar to this LLC's name, even though the LLC is literally based in the United States. The business does business in the United States. I have nothing to do with Russia. I don't have family in Russia. I don't have anything in Russia. And that wire got stuck in limbo for a week, 7 days. And I would call the bank and I'd be like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, where's my money? And they were like, KYC, AML regulations. And apparently this is tied to an entity, like whatever. And I'm like, just because it has similar names, whatever. Long story short, I ended up getting the money. It was 7 days later. I had no idea where the money was for 7 days. And if you compare and contrast that with Bitcoin, right? And this gets to my second point. If someone says they sent you a Bitcoin transaction, it's not a trust me, bro type of situation. It's here's a mempool. You could see your transaction. You could see the transaction the moment they sent it. You could see exactly where it is. You can get an estimated idea of when the transaction is going to confirm, right? It's that open. So this narrative that Bitcoin is somehow, private money and somehow fiat money is public money is utter BS and pure central banker projection, because that's 100% what it is. The so-called public money is co-opted. It's political. It gets censored. Do you guys remember the Canadian truckers protest? That's your money. You earned it. You paid taxes on it. And they still censored it. They froze it because of your political opinions. So imagine, put yourself in Iran's shoes, right? They're just going through this conflict. Their whole leadership, got affected. I don't know how much confidence they have in their local currency. And check out this line, which, by the way, I guarantee you this is going to be weaponized. This statement is going to be weaponized because this is exactly what happened when the Russia conflict started to break out. There was articles that Elizabeth Warren was quoting on X that literally said, oh my God, the Russians are using Bitcoin to skirt OFAC sanctions, right? So I guarantee you this statement is going to be weaponized. I 100% guarantee it. But at the same time, you know what it's signaling? As much as Christine Lagarde and the central bankers are saying that Bitcoin isn't money, as much as, you have these authors, these so-called economists, right? The favorite one on YouTube, he was going viral for a while. I think he kind of dropped off the radar.
Gary Stevenson or
something like that. Anyway, he had this he had this British accent and very.
I think it was Gary. It was Gary something. Yeah, I think it was Stevenson.
He was Gary's economics or something like that. And he's like, listen, and he's really cool and he has the swag, and I guess that's debatable, but whatever. And he has a rhythm to it. But he's basically making the case that, listen, Bitcoin isn't money. It's like, this isn't money. This isn't, it's volatile. It's this, it's that. Ladies and gentlemen, you couldn't make this more poetic if you tried, right? Do you think Iran likes Trump? No. You know how much Trump has invested in Bitcoin? Hundreds of millions of dollars, possibly billions. And there you have his worst enemy, essentially, right now, saying, hey, I want to get paid in Bitcoin. And this goes back to Jeff Booth's quote and thesis, which is the thing about Bitcoin is that you have to be okay with even your worst enemy using Bitcoin. if this is not an indication that Bitcoin is slowly but surely becoming the global reserve currency because of its characteristics, I don't know what other type of example you can provide. Check out the quote. Once the email arrives and Iran completes its assessment, vessels are given a few seconds to pay in Bitcoin, ensuring they can't be traced or confiscated due to sanctions. You know what happens when you politicize the money? The incentive is for other countries that are on that sanction list, whether you agree with them or not, they're going to seek alternatives. That is inevitably what is going to happen. So if you are Russia or if you are Iran, you're saying, I'm not going to touch the US dollar system, because if I touch the US dollar system, there is a risk that depending on the administration, depending on who is in power, they're just going to seize it. They're just going to freeze the account, and I have absolutely no recourse. That is what's going to happen. So if you're Iran, you're saying, I still want to get paid, right? By the way, we'll get into the Iran stuff later. Guys, this wasn't a victory whatsoever. Iran basically got the terms it wanted. It got a ceasefire. It essentially got complete control over the Strait of Hormuz.
It's also updated news this morning where it's still unsure whether the Strait of Hormuz is open and the ceasefire is still on.
Of course, because if you're an insurance company, right, would you essentially, are you going to send the first ship? Like, that's the question. Are you going to send the first ship, through the Strait? So, but that's besides the point. We're not a political channel. We talked a lot about politics yesterday. Today, I want to focus on how consequential this is. We went from 15 years ago, Bitcoin being used to buy, was it Papa John's? It was Papa John's, right? Papa John's?
Little Caesars?
No, it wasn't.
Papa John's?
It was Papa
I forget.
John. It was Papa John's or Domino's. I'm pretty
sure
it
wasn't Domino's. I think it's Papa John's. It was Papa John's.
So we went from Bitcoin being used to a test transaction being used to buy 2 Papa John pizzas, 10,000 Bitcoin. Fast forward 15 years later, for it being used as a way to transact, because if it's not used in this way, the money could and can be confiscated. Now, the Financial Times is not our friend, okay? They're not a friend of Bitcoin. This specific passage plays directly into the narrative that the enemies of Bitcoin are propagating. So I 100% guarantee that the Elizabeth Warren camp is going to take this quote and they're going to absolutely run with it. And something that I've been saying for years on this show is that, guys, Bitcoin is an open monetary protocol. And the way that the current financial system works is it's a system of control. It's a system of control. I gave you the example about receiving a wire from an investment that I made in Brazil. And it took 7 days. It's supposed to take 24 hours. It took 7 days because they were essentially checking that, it wasn't related to whatever, even though it was an entity in the United States. So I don't think, and perhaps it's a little bit like unpopular to say this, but I just think it's the reality, like the architectural reality. I don't think the two systems are compatible. I don't think you can have the bureaucratic control that governments are used to having, which, by the way, they squandered this. Because if they didn't, they couldn't help themselves. But if they didn't weaponize the dollar, then people would keep using the dollar. But if as soon as they weaponize the dollar, as soon as they politicize the dollar, do you think Russia, do you think Iran, or do you think any country that has been sanctioned by the United States, do you think that they'll ever go back to using the dollar? That's a one-way door. You're not going back. Of course you're not going back. Now, I know what some people might be saying in the chat, but Nico, like, it's Iran, it's Russia, it's North Korea. I don't know what happened there. I got like a burp or something.
I don't know where that came from.
That was like a burp or something. It's Iran, it's Russia, it's North Korea. The people most affected by these sanctions are not the governments of those countries. And the reasoning behind the sanctions in the first place, the reason we get told, Cuba included in there as well, the reason we get told we were sold on the sanctions against Russia in order for a regime change. That is why we get told. What we don't get told is that the majority of people living in those countries are just like you and I. Do you think they give a flying F about geopolitics? No. The majority of people in those countries are just trying to live and feed their families and get by. And just because of the place they happen to be born in, they are being told you are not allowed to interact with the global economy. This is what Bitcoin is for. This is literally why Bitcoin was part of the reason Bitcoin was invented. Now, I don't know if the political apparatus, which is why I think this article by the Financial Times is not an innocent one, is going to be okay with this. I don't think they are. I don't think they are. I think they're going to weaponize this. I think that they're going to use this as a justification as to why you can't withdraw to your own self-custody address. I think that this is going to be a justification to put even more pressure on mining pools to censor certain Bitcoin transactions. I think this is going to be used as a justification to attack the censorship-resistant properties of Bitcoin. I don't have a doubt in my mind that's the case, right? So, yeah. I'm telling you, this is one of the biggest pieces of news I think we've seen all year, man. And it plays directly into our thesis, our theory. If you have any doubt that Bitcoin is going to become the global reserve currency, and you're writing a book about this, maybe you're like a historian and you're writing a book about, the adoption of Bitcoin, this is going to be one of those moments that you're going to put in the book. And I remember it was like the ex-prime minister of the UK, and Tucker Carlson was trying to do an interview with him.
Oh yeah. Boris Johnson.
It was Boris Johnson. And it's so funny. The guy was like, yeah, I'll do an interview with you if you pay me $500,000 in Bitcoin or gold. Funny how that works, right? Funny how that works. This is the same politician
and then he came out like 2 weeks ago saying, like, I've never heard of this Bitcoin thing.
Yeah. And this is, like, again, this is the same politician that is implementing these, monetary controls in their countries. But when it comes to them getting paid, when it comes to them receiving funds, yeah, Bitcoin's fine. Right. This is part of the reason Bitcoin became so popular. Like in the early days, WikiLeaks, right, which, the whole Julian Assange thing became super, super famous. Their whole thing was, listen, we're going to expose government corruption and things that are being covered up. The reason they got so famous is that they released a video of an Apache gunship essentially I don't know how much I don't know how graphic I could be on YouTube, but essentially, it was a video that was leaked of an Apache gunship, and some people were targeted that were not supposed to be targeted, and it was pretty bad, right? And of course, the United States military covered it up, like from an optics perspective, and WikiLeaks actually got a hold of the video and they leaked the video, and it became a major scandal, right? Now, what was the first thing that happened to WikiLeaks? Well, what did governments do? Governments put pressure on the payment providers. So WikiLeaks could no longer accept donations in Visa or MasterCard. So what did they do? They started accepting donations in Bitcoin. That was one of the best trades that ever happened to them, because this was back in 2012, 2013. Actually, this was one of the reasons that Satoshi decided to disappear, was when the whole WikiLeaks debacle started. So it's fascinating to me that this quote came and the Financial Times is dropping this. And of course, you have none other than Saifedean Ammous, the author of, I would say, one of the most consequential economic books of our generations, The Bitcoin Standard, tweeting about it. Iran is collecting its Hormuz toll in Bitcoin. Good reasons for holding US dollars get fewer every day. And again, I don't think they can help themselves. Full stop. They can't help themselves but to debase, and they can't help themselves but to politicize the money, but to police the money. And if they politicize the money, if they police the money, if they debase the money, you know what? That is the primary reason. That is the major incentive. That is why you say, hey, listen, I don't want to deal with that anymore. I don't want political money. I don't want money that you can freeze. I don't want money that I have to ask for permission to use, because that concept is insane if you think about it. You work, you pay taxes, you earn money, and despite you, quote unquote, earning money, they could still debase it and they could still censor it for retroactive reasons. So it's not like, oh, okay, you broke this law. It's like, no. All of a sudden, we made a law, and then because we made this new law, we could just freeze all the money. Imagine if we lived in a world where governments didn't have the capacity to do that. I think there's going to be pros and cons, 100%. No doubt about it. But I personally believe, I think you're going to see a much more honest world, a much more transparent world. And at the same time, I don't want to be lectured by the government, because the last time we as a people elected a government to go in there and audit and see what they're doing with our tax dollars, Elon went in there, someone who literally invented self-driving cars and self-landing rockets, and they literally ran him out of town. So we can't audit them. They can audit us. They can freeze our shit. We can't freeze them. They say that our shit is private, and they say that their shit is public, even though we can't audit the Fed, even though we can't, I can't send a U.S. wire to someone in Cuba, right? Let's say it's just a family member, not connected to anybody in the government whatsoever, just a family member. I can't do that. And if I can, they're going to take an exorbitant fee, and it has to go through a middleman. And there's a possibility that it doesn't even get to the position. Listen, the majority of people don't give a flying F about the geopolitical situation and the war. The majority of people on planet Earth are like you and I. You know what they care about? Feeding their families, putting food on the table, and just going about their day. That's what they care about. And that is who Bitcoin is for. They don't care about the political situation. They don't care. So this is enormous news. This is massive news. And you put the bullish news aside, what Opti was talking about in terms of how much money that is. It plays.
Yeah, the precedent is way bigger.
The precedent is way bigger, but let's talk about the numbers because I know you guys love number go up. So let's talk about it, okay? You add the fact that Stretch is literally buying the entirety of the supply.
No, 2 times the supply.
2 times the entirety
so far
of the
this
mine
year.
supply, right? That's just one entity. You don't even bring up MicroStrategy. You don't even bring up MetaPlanet. You don't even bring up the sovereign wealth funds. You don't even bring all that up. You have a nation state with 90 million people that's basically saying, hey, listen, every ship, roughly 100 a day, you have to pay me a fee, and that fee has to be in Bitcoin. Like,
yeah, so the numbers I looked was 80 to 130 ships a day.
What did we cover yesterday?
Morgan Stanley ETF launch.
ETF?
I don't know if we're covering that today, but there is some interesting news about its release. Maybe I'll cover it in the culture if you don't have the news.
I mean, like, guys, this isn't rocket science, ladies and gentlemen. All right, this isn't rocket science, okay? This is not rocket science. This is not rocket science. You don't have to be, particularly plugged into the geopolitical situation or what's going on here or what's going on there. This is massive. And this proves exactly our thesis. And this is why Bitcoin ultimately is going to win, because it is a money that is owned and controlled by nobody. It's rules without rulers. It proves that money can function without a nation state. That's what it proves. And not only does it prove that it can function without a nation state, it proves that it's actually better without the ruler. It proves that the ruler has consistently abused their power and control over the money to benefit themselves at the expense of the people. That's what Bitcoin proves. And this massive breaking news today confirms that. It confirms it 100%. They're saying, hey, listen, the Prime Minister of the UK that wanted to get interviewed by Tucker Carlson, don't pay me in pounds. They could censor that. Pay me in Bitcoin. Pay me in gold. Iran, who just in a conflict with the United States, yeah, we're going to collect that toll. But that toll, we don't want it in dollars. Why don't they want it in dollars? Because they're going to freeze that shit. You know what they want it in? They want it in Bitcoin. And they'll probably keep it in Bitcoin. Another thing that I want to mention too is in terms of the hash rate, I think Iran represents as like 5 to 8%.
I think it's higher than that, but yeah, a significant amount of the hash rate.
They represent a huge part of the overall Bitcoin hash rate. Now, here's the thing. Bitcoin doesn't care about what your political beliefs are, what your religion is, what your race is. That's the beauty of it. It's neutral money. It's neutral money. So the reason I'm giving all of this context and I'm getting all hyped up and I'm talking about all of this is, make no mistake, over the next 5 to 10 years, when they start trying to cry boogeyman and wolf, oh my God, this is evil, this is horrible, we can't live in a world where we can't censor the money. This is going to cause global financial instability and crime is going to rise. You have to ask yourself, do those people actually have the moral standing to tell you all of those things? I don't know. I do remember the daycares, though. I think that made the news cycle for like a week, and then I don't know what happened. It's almost as if that story dropped off the face of the earth. I don't know what happened there, man. That was weird. That was strange, right? It's like we got Doge in there. We got Elon. You know, it's one of the smartest guys. Maybe some people don't like Elon. I'm a fan of Elon. Got in there and he was like, all right, look at all these inefficiencies. Dude, they ran him out of town. Okay. And then how many audits has the Pentagon failed in a row? What is it, like 7?
When's the last time they actually even got audited? It's a real question.
When was the last time we saw gold at Fort Knox?
Yeah, where's the gold on it?
Where is the gold? Right? So again, it's rules for thee, but not for me. Okay, you could say that was the best system. I got a crazy solution. You ready? Rules without rulers. Who's the only people that are going to be upset in that proposal? It's going to be the rulers, right? And again, maybe they had this moral justification why as to there should be rulers. But what I've seen, and I've mentioned a couple examples from the last 15 to 20 years, is that boy, oh boy, do those rulers use those rules against you, and they kind of use them as, like, you know, recommendations for themselves. What happened in that island, man? What happened? What happened? What happened? What's going on?
Hey, yo.
Those files sure, you know, dropped off the face of the earth, did they not, huh? Never saw them again. They just disappeared. Anyways, guys, it's going to be a great show. We have tons to talk about. Other breaking news as well. Charles Schwab, one of the biggest brokerages in the United States, announcing that they're going to be releasing Bitcoin trading for their clients. And they released the recommendations to how much Bitcoin should someone purchase. And most importantly, they put in that very important number, that very important assumption of, hey, listen, this might appreciate 25. This might have a 25% CAGR. So we're going to be talking about this. Also, kind of relating to this theme and this topic as well, is Michael Saylor went on Peter McCormack's show a while back, and he was actually talking about the Hayek quote, where he was talking about, listen, we got big problems. We can't really, and this is what Elon experienced, and this is, I think, something that I learned with this election cycle. You can't really change the system from within the system, because the system will fight you back. So you kind of have to find this sly roundabout way, right? So it's interesting hearing Saylor talk about that in particular, because I think everyone's perception of Saylor as of late has been that, hey, listen, he's just this like suit coiner, and that's what he's about, et cetera, et cetera. So anyways, guys, it's going to be a fantastic show. We hit 500 live viewers on YouTube alone. If you guys are enjoying it, make sure to smash that like button, consider subscribing, and shout out to everybody watching us on Rumble, on YouTube, on X, your platform of choice. Another historic day in Bitcoin. And we got a little bit of a price pump, which was nice. It was nice.
Well, it retraced a little bit, but we're above 70. That's all that really matters.
We're above 70. Anyways, we got a ton to talk about. We're going to be right back in just a bit. We'll be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by Bitcoin Well Infinite. If you're a serious Bitcoin buyer, you've probably hit the same wall. Most platforms make you give up custody just to play by the rules. Bitcoin Well Infinite fixes that. They're North America's only publicly traded, non-custodial OTC desk listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, which means transparent operations and zero counterparty risk.
You buy Bitcoin, you take immediate control, period. For trades over $50,000, you get a dedicated executive Bitcoin advisor, competitive spread starting at 1%, and immediate delivery straight to your own wallet. No custody risk, no withdrawal fees, just institutional grade execution with full asset control. If you want to buy Bitcoin the right way, book a free consultation at bitcoinwell.com/OTC or email infinite@bitcoinwell.com.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, StampSeed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed phrases really secure? StampSeed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need for you to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates, instead of just writing them down on paper. Paper is fragile. Titanium plates are strong. Your words are actually stamped into the titanium plate with this hammer and these letter stamping tools. Once the words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and pieces falling everywhere.
Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They're also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and time-proof. And now you can customize your titanium seed plates. You can upload your design or logo, and they will laser engrave it on the back of your seed plate, the opposite side of where the words are. Stamp your seed on Stamp Seed and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the stampseed.com store.
All right, everybody. If you guys want to support the show, check out our sponsors. They're fantastic. We're very, very picky on who we choose to partner with. We only partner with hardcore, what we believe are companies that live and breathe the Bitcoin ethos. So if you guys want to support the show, check out our sponsors. They're down in the link, video link description. Check out Stamp Seed. Don't write down your seed words on paper. Stamp them into titanium. Check out Bitcoin Well. It's literally self-custody by default on-ramp. I think the only one in the United States. BitcoinWell.com/simply. If you sign up, you literally get free sats. What are you waiting for? BitcoinWell.com/simply. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is $71,600. Sats per dollar, 1,397. Block height, 944,215. Realized monetary inflation, 0.83%. Market cap, 1.43 trillion. Bitcoin versus gold market cap is 4.77%. Percentage issued, 95.3%. Decline from all-time high, 43.3%. So if you're buying Bitcoin right now, you're getting it at a 43% discount. Boy, is it hot in here, dude. We got to figure out this AC issue,
I keep saying it, dude.
It's out of control. I am sweating. All right.
I keep saying it.
Anyhow, back to the topic at hand. Our boy Sam Callahan, who's now with Orange BTC. Shout out, Guy. Very interesting post this morning. Charles Schwab is launching BTC trading for its 46 million clients in Q2. That in and of itself is a story. Our boy Luke and Opti are probably gonna get upset because
you just stole our story.
I just burnt a headline.
Whatever. We got other stuff.
I just burnt a headline. I'm sorry, boys.
Dude, this guy's making my job so much harder.
This is a good headline story. So you guys are getting two headline stories back to back on today's show. It's a good show. Smash the like button. Consider subscribing. Check out our sponsors. Anyways, Charles Schwab is launching BTC trading for its 46 million clients in Q2. Yeah, I messed up, bro. That's literally a title. That's literally a title.
Dude, this guy makes my job so much harder.
That's literally a title. They now say that if an investor expects I'm sorry. I apologize. This is totally,
just keep going. Just keep going. Whatever. We're feeding the chat today. We're feeding the chat.
This is a headline story. You guys are getting two headline stories back to back. Special treat. They now say that if an investor expects BTC to return 25% annually, the optimal allocation is 3% to 22%. Historically, BTC has returned well over 25% annually in the 5 years following 50% corrections. So, why is this a big deal? Why should you care? Why is this important? And how does this affect me? Those are all very good questions. Now, let me tell you why.
Hit that visual and just keep it on the screen.
Yeah. One of the largest, they got Ether in there. I don't know. Listen,
they can't be perfect.
Everyone, it's not perfect, but it's getting there. It's close. Charles Schwab is the brokerage. The most important thing, Charles Schwab is the brokerage that rejected Opti. Okay,
it's true.
So we're going full circle in this lore right now. Okay, they have come back to Opti and they have said indirectly, "Listen, man. We listened to your show. We apologize. We're still not opening an account for you, but
yeah, I'm still broke.
You were right. I'm joking, but I'm also being serious. This is take the Iran stuff, take the Morgan Stanley stuff. Now you have one of the largest brokerage firms in the United States. This is like what my family uses to buy stocks, right? Like one of the largest brokerage firms in the United States 46 million clients. I think they're tied to a bank, by the way. Basically announcing that, say, listen, we're launching BTC trading for its 46 million clients. Do you think it's because they read the Bitcoin standard? No, it's because they're seeing what BlackRock is doing. They're seeing what Strategy is doing. They're seeing the fortune that Robinhood, Coinbase, and all these other, exchange thing. What are you pointing at?
The chat, dude. Don't worry about what I do. Keep going.
Okay. Anyhow, but you've been pointing at this whole show.
It's because I'm emphasizing the comments here, dude.
But where are the comments? We should do that. Should pull up.
Dude, just keep going.
Anyhow,
keep going.
And they're saying, hey, to quote Sam, now say that if an investor expects BTC to return 25% annually, the optimal allocation is 3 to 22%. That's wild. Wild. And then they put annual return assumption. So if you think it's 0, obviously your allocation should be 0. If it's 5, a little bit of a jab there, they're like, it should be 0. If it's a 10% return, they think your allocation should be 1.5. Aggressive is 1.9. If you think, and this goes to Michael Saylor's thesis, which he thinks that the annual return of Bitcoin for the next 20 years is going to be 20%. Charles Schwab is saying you should allocate, a moderate allocation should be 16.9%. If you think Bitcoin's CAGR for the next 20 years is going to be 15%, your allocation should be 6.6. And that is moderate. If you think the annual return assumption is going to be 25%, they're saying you should put 22% of your portfolio into Bitcoin. I definitely effed up using this as the numbers because this in and of itself is a good intro story.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is I told you not to put this on the show, but whatever. It's all good. It's all good. We're feeding the chat. But for those people that don't know, I've told this story before, but before I found Bitcoin, I went to Charles Schwab with $250, and they literally laughed me out of the building. They were like, sorry, it takes $2,500 to start an account here. That's before Robinhood. That's before, all of the prediction markets that are even a thing. That's before you can really invest basically nothing. That's before Cash App. You could buy $1 of stocks. And now it is, when I heard this story, I went down memory lane. I'm like, man, I remember that. And here we are, full circle. It's been about 10 years since that happened. And the only thing I can really think about, again, me being self-centered here, I had to pat myself on the back. I'm like, dude, I'm really glad they denied me because I wouldn't have found Bitcoin, first and foremost. Second, it took them 10 years to catch up to what we're all doing here. But I guess, better late than never. But the allocations, I was just thinking of, the Wolf of Wall Street, Matthew McConaughey meme. It's like they got to pump these numbers up. If you think it's going to go up 25%, I think it's, I guess, annual CAGR, on an annualized basis, that's probably pretty safe bet. But, dude, we need to see that 100%. We need to see the Charles Schwab recommending everyone go all in. But again, obviously I'm trolling. That's like what we think. That's what we do. Just average people. They're obviously making conservative bets here because they do have financial, fiduciary responsibilities. And so they can't just go full bull charge. But that's besides the point. I think the main point here is something that a lot of us Bitcoiners and a lot of people in the chat don't really like to talk about. They are seeing what we've seen a long time ago. The banks are putting their stamps of approval on Bitcoin. And I know a lot of us look at this story and we're like, I don't really care what the banks tell me. I totally get that. But what we are seeing is really connected to the idea of us potentially jumping the chasm from the early adopters, the pioneers, to the early majority. And I think this is the start of the early majority. When the biggest banks in the world finally come around, actually, someone said in the chat a minute ago, it's like, what happens after the then they fight you stage? It's the then you win stage. Now, obviously, I think we're still in the then they fight you stage, but we're starting to see that, hey, the big banks, the big hedge funds, the institutional investors, in the face of all of the uncertainty in the world, in the face of basically potentially not seeing great returns, what are they looking towards? They're starting to see that, hey, maybe this Bitcoin thing is a viable investment. Now, one of the things we usually do with all of our news stories on this show is in the hopes that if a random person comes on this, they're not fully sold on Bitcoin, that we just give them a bunch of different data points so that maybe they start to understand that this Bitcoin thing is taking over the world or is going to take over the world. Now, today, we did basically give you 2 headline stories. So if someone watches this, maybe they don't like Iran. Maybe they think, you know, like they're bad guys. I don't want them. I don't want to touch something that the bad guys are touching. Totally, I think, reasonable response if you're just an average person. Like if you're just watching the news, you're seeing this Bitcoin thing. What have they been calling Bitcoin forever? Like money for criminals and stuff now. And now it's like, okay, that first news story, maybe that one didn't hit. Now we have someone that they're probably trading with. They probably have an account with, basically saying, hey, we think it's going to go up about 25% a year. Our most bullish case. So you should probably invest, what was it, 1 to 25% or 5 to 25%? It's like, how many more data points do people need for them to start to understand that this Bitcoin thing isn't going away? It's not going to zero. And further, it's going to continue to go up. But even more so, on top of that, it's literally starting to, and some people might not like this, incorporate itself with the traditional financial system. It's becoming the bedrock foundation of finances. It is the neutral settlement, geopolitically neutral money of the world. It is the neutral money of the world with instant settlement, with irreversible payments, that is permissionless. This year, I said it a couple of days ago, maybe it's a few weeks ago now, but if 2025 was the year that was very lackluster in terms of price, we did get a lot of significant stepping stones that are setting us up for what can potentially be an incredible run 2027, 2028, 2029 to 2030, because all the foundations are being built out right now. And what are we seeing in 2026? We're at month 4 for the year, not even at fully, not even at the end of the 4th month. And we're seeing all of the biggest institutions starting to unleash Bitcoin products. 2026 might be the year that we thought 2025 was going to be. And I know I saw some people in the chat and they're like, how come Bitcoin's going down with all these big news? It's usually pretty simple. There's just probably a lot of sellers right now. As we've been covering, there's a little bit of tension and pressure going on these Bitcoin treasury companies. If the price is going down, even in the face of all of the buying, it means that there's probably more sellers right now. We don't have the data to pinpoint where that's coming from. But once the selling does become fully exhausted, it's like Saylor himself is going to be driving this price, let alone with all of the other good news. I don't know, man. 2026 is seemingly going to end up a very, very good year is all I'm going to say. But
100%.
We'll see.
Anyways, guys, before we move on, I do want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor. Guys, one of the biggest problems that people have with Bitcoin, and right now that we're like essentially 45% down, so the risk is significantly lower, is you obviously don't want to sell your Bitcoin. You don't want to sell it. So what happens? You have this Bitcoin wealth, but you can't tap into it. This is where Bitcoin collateralized loans fix this problem, right? You send your Bitcoin as collateral, you get the cash. When you get the cash, there's no tax implications for that because, again, it's a loan, right? This is actually going to Mark Moss's thesis. Like Mark Moss's thesis has been making a lot of content about this, where he's been making the case. He's like, look, hey, you shouldn't be selling your Bitcoin as you retire. You should be essentially using your assets to take loans against your assets, and that's how you live. And by the way, this is what the very wealthy do with companies. So like the reason you hear that like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos doesn't pay taxes, it's because they never actually sell their stock in their companies. What they do is they go to a bank and they say, hey, could you give me a loan against this amount of equity in my company? And then those banks are like, sure, I would love to do that. So again, Ledn is a great way where you can tap into the wealth of your Bitcoin without having to sell it. And they just announced their new rates. So if you're taking a loan under $250,000, their new rate is 11.49%. If you're taking a loan between $250K and $500K, their rate is 10.99%. If you're taking a loan between $500K and $1 million, their rate is 10.49%. And if you're taking a loan of $1 million or more, their new rate is 9.99%. They do not rehypothecate. They do not use your Bitcoin and lend it out to other people. It's very safe in custody. And again, they have proof of reserves. They've never lost a single sat or dollar of customer funds. And they've lent out over $10 billion over an 8-year period. I think it's 8 years. Yeah, it's a long time. So these guys are the real deal. You could check the link in the video description, and you can use that link and you'll get 0.25% off your first loan with Ledn. Go check them out. All right, everybody, let's move on to the next segment. We have tons to talk about. We have a clip of the one and only Michael Saylor saying the quiet part out loud, saying what we've been talking about, the general theme of this show. We're going to be right back in just a bit.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, Ledn, the leader in Bitcoin-backed loans. Ledn lets you unlock the liquidity in your Bitcoin without ever having to sell it. Since 2018, they've issued over $10 billion in loans to more than 10,000 customers worldwide. I love these guys, and not only do I have an account with them, I also have a loan. And here's what really sets them apart. There are no monthly payments, and you can pay back the loan at any time. Once you send your Bitcoin as collateral, you can have cash in your account within 24 hours. Ledn has over 1,000 five-star customer reviews, and they've never lost a single dollar or single sat of customer funds. So if you want to tap into the wealth of your Bitcoin without having to sell it, head over to learn.ledn.io/simply today, and you'll get 0.25% off your first loan. I want to give a shout out to our partner, sat123.com. Sovereignty isn't just about your money. It's about your communications too. When the grid goes down, most people go dark. Cell towers fail in hurricanes, cyber attacks, and blackouts. But satellite phones, they don't rely on local infrastructure. Iridium has 77 satellites in orbit, giving you a direct line anywhere in the US, even offshore. If you hold your own Bitcoin keys, you should hold your own comms too. Sat123.com also has everything you need to start building your Bitcoin citadel. Starlink, battery backups, Faraday bags to protect your hardware wallets, and much, much more. It's a one-stop shop for anyone serious about resilience and off-grid independence. Stay connected, stay independent, stay sovereign. Go to sat123.com/simply today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store. I want to give a shout out to our partner, BitKey. If you already self-custody your Bitcoin, you know the deal with hardware wallets by now. Complex setups, clumsy interfaces, and a seed phrase that can be lost, stolen, or forgotten. BitKey fixes that. BitKey is a multi-sig hardware wallet built by the team behind Square and Cash App. It packs a cryptographic recovery system and built-in inheritance feature into an intuitive, easy-to-use wallet with no seed phrase to sweat over. It's simple, secure, self-custody without the stress. Time named BitKey one of the best inventions of 2024. Get 20% off at bitkey.world. That's BITKEY.world with the code SIMPLY.
All right, everybody. Guys, you want to take self-custody of your Bitcoin, not your keys. not your cheese. So I recommend the BitKey hardware wallet. Incredibly easy to use. It has multi-sig built in, has inheritance planning built in, and it's built by the team that build Cash App and Square. So this is the real deal. You hold this device, it's very nicely made. Put your fingerprint, you tap it with your phone, bam, bing, bam, boom, you're ready to send. If you have friends and family, and yourself too, but if you have friends and family that feel like you tell them about self-custody and they get all freaked out, like this is literally the perfect Christmas gift or Thanksgiving gift or everyday type of gift, right? This makes taking self-custody of your Bitcoin extremely easy without sacrificing security. Go to bitkey.world today, bitkey.world, and use promo code SIMPLY, and you get a 20% discount if you use that code. So you definitely don't want to miss that. Anywho, let's get to this video. It is a 4-minute video, so I don't know if I'll play the whole thing. But first of all, I want to give a shout out to the content creator, What Bitcoin Did, Peter McCormack. I know it's with Danny Knowles now, but this is when Peter was hosting the podcast. And this is one of his legendary rips with Michael Saylor. And maybe Saylor has changed since then, like his perspective and whatnot. But I do find it interesting. Let me know if you guys could hear it.
Once you realize that so many things that you took for granted aren't necessarily so, and it calls you to open your eyes toward a bunch of things in the world. Well, there's two responses you could have. One response is to note there's 100 things that are wrong with the world and start to complain about all 100 of them. And the other response is just to pick one single thing that you can do that might make a difference. And I'm of the opinion that I could complain about 100 things in the world that I disagree with, that I would talk about with you privately, but the world doesn't want my opinion and it doesn't care. And those things aren't going to change based upon me complaining about them. I don't have any real power. And I also think, I remember the words of Hayek. You know, he says, you know, you want to take money away from the state, you know, you can't do it, you know, in a frontal assault. You have to do it in a sly, roundabout way. Mm-hmm. So my view is, how do you fight, you know, something which is so entrenched in the civilization that the harder you push, the harder it pushes back? And the answer is you have to introduce a new idea that will go viral. So, for example, Bitcoin, you know, is a new idea. You could view it as freedom technology, a freedom virus. And you can also view it as a monetary virus to give sound money to the world. So if I want to give freedom and sovereignty and dignity and empowerment to 8 billion people, I don't loudly scream that their overlords ought to stop leaning on them. You know, I'm not going to topple every government and every corporate overlord and everything. So what I do is I introduce a new technology that spreads virally. And if I want to give property rights to 8 billion people, I introduce a new technology. And when you introduce a new technology, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. I think when you say, you're wrong, you're stupid, I'm smart, do it my way, change your way, right? The louder you say that, the harder someone pushes back against you.
That's like parenting.
You create inflammation.
Yeah.
Right? And there are examples in our political system where certain political parties, their position is the other party is wrong, we're right, they're stupid, we're smart, do it our way, and give us credit and blame them. Right. And so that's an inflammatory approach. I think that you could spend $100 billion trying to jam your idea on someone that doesn't want it. They will just crowdsource $100 billion of power to push back. And that's called fighting a war. Right. You're just going to war. I think that the more elegant way is to introduce a new idea, you know, Bitcoin. What is it good for? Oh, It'll be good for your family. What else? It'll be good for your company. What else? Oh, it'll help your bank. What else? It'll help your state. What else? It'll help your city. It'll help your country. What else? You want to fight a war? It'll help you win the war. You disagree with X, it'll help your political party. You want to win an election, it'll help you win, right? What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is good for you, right? Bitcoin is empowerment technology that will allow you to be the best version of yourself. Who's losing? Nobody's losing. Who's wrong? Nobody's wrong. Just everybody's just better with this. It's better living through technology. And my approach is, I think about the one thing that can make the world a better place. And I think about the one thing I might accomplish. Like I literally don't think, like MicroStrategy spent $7.5 billion buying Bitcoin. I don't think that if we spent $7.5 billion on the next 100 things you think are wrong with the world, I don't think it'd make a difference. I think that you would just spend the money and the counter side, the other opposition, would spend an equivalent amount of money to negate the amount of money you're spending. So I don't think you change the world through full frontal attacks, and I don't think you change it through aggressive confrontation. I think you change it through elegant, diplomatic innovation.
I mean, I don't know if the things have changed, but
I would argue differently. Just like watching what we're seeing with Stretch. He basically did exactly what he said he was going to do in that clip. It's just a little different because if what we're seeing happen with Stretch right now, and I was trying to find the numbers for you guys for what we're seeing happen, but literally I don't have the numbers off the top of my head right now. But we saw in the first 45 minutes of the market open today, and we saw it yesterday as well, and we've seen it for the last couple of weeks. The Stretch product is literally doing exactly what he said. It's such a good product that it's going viral, and the amount of capital that it's attracting right now, the amount of Bitcoin that just the Stretch product alone is acquiring or being able to buy Bitcoin with it's literally doing what he said. You introduce an idea that is so good that it's going viral. And I don't think anything has really changed. I just think like Saylor obviously realizing the power of Bitcoin and just sitting in his throne in his mansion is just thinking of the best products and how do I tap into all of these different liquidity pools. And I think he's finally found the one that is really going to be like the product that everyone's going to want to follow, or rather that everyone's going to be attracted to.
They made the stream private on YouTube.
Really?
Yeah.
Rip. Your YouTube feed just cut. Rip.
We just made it public again.
Oh man, here we go again.
Anyways, let's keep the show going. Let's move on to the culture, shall we?
Yes.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technologies. Fueled by clean energy, HIVE has quadrupled its global Bitcoin mining footprint and channels that same scale into high-performance compute, where their AI cloud is now ranked #1 in the world for network performance. At HIVE, you've got dual engines, Bitcoin and AI humming, roaring, accelerating in unison. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're rewriting the playbook on sustainable digital infrastructure. You can catch the latest buzz at Hive Digital Tech or at hivedigitaltech.com.
Wow, we were on a roll there. We were on a roll.
It's all good. We still got some people coming back.
We'll be all right. Anyways, guys, I do want to update you guys on the Morgan Stanley ETF. As we covered on yesterday's show, it's officially launched today. It's officially live on the New York Stock Exchange. And it really adds to what I was just saying before we realized what happened. The amount of interest coming into Bitcoin right now is at levels that we've never seen before. And I know there's been a lot of pushback from the community, from, you know, the more hardcore, maybe cypherpunk leaning Bitcoiners. It's basically like the Matrix meme, you know, like not like this, you know, that one scene, like not like this. But I think if you really have thought out where and how Bitcoin was going to revolutionize the world, then it had to become financialized. It had to get integrated into the financial system, or else it wasn't going to be the world reserve currency or the world's neutral money. And we're starting to see that this is happening now in 2026. We've been in Bitcoin for, you know, many years now. And in previous bear markets, the rumors, the speculation, the one thing that many people can basically rest their hopes on was this idea that institutions were coming. 2024, it officially unlocked the institutions. 2025, we saw, you know, pretty good interest. We finally saw the banks being allowed to get in. Now it seems that 2026, we're seeing a snowball effect right now. And one of those data points is what we're seeing from Morgan Stanley. Again, the first U.S. bank to launch an ETF. It's not just a hedge fund. It's not just them being an authorized participant to an ETF. They have taken upon themselves to launch their own ETF. And as we covered yesterday, Morgan Stanley holds about on the higher level, about $6 trillion of clients' assets. They're recommending about 1 to 4% allocations into Bitcoin. They have 16,000 advisors now, literally today, basically on the phone, telling their clients, hey, you need to get some Bitcoin. And particularly, obviously, you need to buy the Morgan Stanley ETF. It's going to be very profitable. Well, we have the numbers, at least so far. You know, the trading day, we still have about 3 hours left, so this hasn't been updated. I'm sure the final numbers will be bigger than this. But here is the numbers being shared by Eric Balchunas, and this was at noon, so about 2 hours ago, an hour and a half ago. So we can only expect that these are higher. Here's Eric Balchunas. He goes, trading day is half over. At this point, we don't have an update. I did check his Twitter. We don't have an update on this. But trading day is half over, and the Morgan Stanley Bitcoin Trust is at $27 million in volume. So it's definitely going to clear that $30 million estimate. Probably end up around $50 million on its first day, which is huge. Top 1% of ETF launches. If this is not an indicator of just how much interest there actually is in Bitcoin products, especially when it comes from a huge U.S. bank, I think they're like top 6 bank in the U.S., one of the top banks of the world. If this continues, who knows where this is going to end up today? It could be bigger than the $30 or $50 million speculations. But if this continues, it continues to snowball. And as we've all kind of, I guess, maybe begrudgingly got our heads around, it seems like these ETFs are actually buying all of this Bitcoin. Now, there's probably some technicalities and some details there that
let's cover this on tomorrow's stream. Seems like we're having some issues on the YouTube side. We're gonna wrap it up, guys. Love you. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.